So the important thing here is that you want to make sure you're starting out early, right from the time you begin a school or a school year, and make sure that you're really clear about your expectations in terms of, how your child is supported or what their needs are, and even things like, your family values and goals and, longer term sort of, expectations and vision for your child. The other bit is, as you begin your journey with the school and educators, make sure that they are aware of your children's rights in the education space, the frameworks that support their rights, and really make sure they are informed about how to best support your child. So this is all about collaboration, about sharing information. And the other thing is, when you share information, remember, teachers are busy, they look after so many children in a class. So share information in the most easy to access manner for them. So it could be little snippets, short sort of summaries of reports, if that's what you're sharing. If you are sharing things like family values, having a little A4 sheet with, your family values, goals, outcomes, that could be sort of shared. So there's lots of different ways in which you can do it, but it's important to build that relationship with the educators, with the school. And also the other thing you can do is start connecting with your school community, building those informal connections with other children, families, creating opportunities to engage and interact with others in the school community is really important as well. So the reason why I say this is really important, connecting with others as well, is because that gives a sense of belonging to your child. And it's really important. Without belonging, you can't really have that well-being, strong self-identity, or strong engagement in the education space. So really, really important that we sort of, focus on all of that. Using the concept of ACO and really letting educators know that your child is there to learn, but your child can also teach them a lot about different ways of doing things and different ways of interacting, engaging with the world. So it's really important that you highlight how your child can contribute positively to the school, to peers, to other educators in the educational space. Our school education system is not actually well equipped to support our neurodivergent children. And so it's really important that we are working in partnership with schools, because we understand our children really well, and we support them with information on how they can do better to support our children. And part of that is, the teachers are on their own learning journey. So just being a little appreciative about that fact and encouraging them and supporting them to learn alongside you and your child is really important. And the other bit you could consider in terms of building the partnership is at a governance level, getting onto school boards or even supporting school boards, by asking them questions, constructive questions, offering them some solutions in terms of, how they can shift towards a more inclusive policy within their school and practice, how they can better support students who are neurodivergent. And the other thing is also looking at the participation, learning, well-being of our children across the school space, not just the within the classroom space. So, your things like lunch breaks, assemblies, outdoor trips, all of these things, how can you better plan for them, and how can you better support neurodivergent students, attending, participating, and being successful when they participate in these educational spaces. It's really important to start at the beginning, working with schools, setting up your expectations. And similarly, when you have concerns, it's important to start right early on and make sure that you are raising those concerns in an appropriate manner with the school. It could be having conversations, checking out what the school policy is and then following through on that. But Alongside conversations, I always say, make sure that you are putting things in writing. So even if you have a conversation about a concern, follow it up with a written email, just highlighting the key points that you might have discussed with the person. It's really important to make sure that you find some allies to support you, because it can be quite exhausting for a parent to, sort of keep raising concerns and not being heard. So if you can find allies, if you can find other professionals who might be able to support and take forward your concerns, that's useful. I would also suggest contact the Ministry of Education, your local regional Ministry of Ed office, because they usually have staff who work alongside schools and liaise with school principals or SENCOs. And so it's worthwhile approaching them and asking them to have a chat with the school and see what can be done to address your concerns. The other bit that you can do is also consider getting somebody as an advocate, taking somebody along with you when you are going in for meetings and things like that. My suggestion is look at how you can try and resolve the concerns in a more informal way through, allies, advocates, having those conversations, even things like sharing information and offering sort of, suggestions in terms of best practice or good practice, examples of good practice, what's happening in other spaces, how is somebody else managing, a similar situation, what are other schools doing really well, and sort of sharing that information. And this is where networking with other families is really important, because you hear from other families what's working, what's not, and so you can share, what you hear from them and pass that information on to schools. But ultimately, if everything else fails and you have not been able to resolve the matter, then it's important that you formally lodge a complaint with the principal, school principal, and if that is not resolving the matter, then ensure you lodge a complaint with the Board of Trustees, because they are the ones who oversee schools and they're the employers of schools. The other avenues you have, once you've approached the board and it's not worked out, a few other avenues you have is a formal complaint with the Ministry of Education or the Human Rights Commission and asking them for a mediation, which allows, a conversation to happen, and then you can look at, some outcomes, possible outcomes from there. The other place you could consider is the Teaching Council. And now the Teaching Council can only be approached if you have specific concerns with a registered teacher, and they have two categories. One is competence and the other one is conduct. So unfortunately, the New Zealand education system doesn't have a lot of avenues for disabled people or neurodivergent students to resolve issues around discrimination, but the key thing is that you engage in a dialogue and look at who you can connect with that can support you to get some positive outcomes for your children.